All right, fellas, have you ever had a woman say to you, "You're not listening to me, you don't get me, you're not empathetic"? Whoa, wait a minute. What about us men? What about you guys? Have you ever had a woman not understand you, respect you? Have been frustrated that she's not getting you and you're saying the same thing? It makes logical sense and she doesn't get you. Well, stick around because three of us are going to go through. Is it true that men are bad listeners? Could it be that women are also bad listeners? We're going to debunk some of the myths around this. Welcome to the Nice Guy Show. I'm your host, Faisal Kokar, and I'm joined by Ari and Chuck. Three of us are No More Mr. Nice Guy coaches helping you to become great men in love, sex, and relationships. Now, when I was in my relationship, in my previous marriage, I remember I was sitting on the sofa and then we got into an argument. And then about 20 minutes later, she's really distressed, upset. And she says to me, Faisal, you're not listening to me. You never get me. And I'm going, what do you mean I don't listen to you? I repeated back all the things that she was saying. And she still said to me, she said, you don't get it, do you? You're not listening. And I'm going, what do you mean I'm not listening? I've just repeated everything back to you and you're telling me I'm not listening to you? It didn't make logical sense. It doesn't make sense. Chuck, have you ever been in that position where she says, you're not listening to me?
Yes, I have, and I think uh, I'm reminded of a story that happened back in my first marriage, where the house we lived in, the house we owned, was run by oil heat, and so we had this large oil tank in the back, buried underneath the yard, where they would come out and they would fill it with oil, and that's what we would use to heat the house. And you had to remember to have them come out and put the oil in, or you would run out of oil. And whenever you ran out of oil, it was a big pain in the butt because then you had to have somebody come out and restart everything. And I remember one day my wife coming to me and saying, "I think we're almost out of oil." And I went, "Yeah, she's probably right." And then we ran out of oil. And then she was upset with me. And I'm like, "Why are you upset with me?" And she said, "Well, I told you we're almost out of oil. You don't listen to me." And I was like, "Oh, I listened to you. I heard that you said we were almost out of oil. I didn't realize I was supposed to order oil." So, yes, I was being a bad listener because, there was some miscommunication going on. But yeah, I have been in that place where I feel like I'm being told that I'm not a good listener. And yeah, I can get kind of defensive around that.
What about you, Ari?
Yeah, I'm just flashing back to my marriage and just thinking about conversations that would go on for hours, um, and just feeling like all the empathizing I could do and owning my share of things and validating her. It just never felt like she felt heard or empathized with, listened to. Um, so it was endlessly frustrating. Um,
Hang on a minute. Hold on. You said you were empathizing with her, right? Validating her, and she still never felt understood.
yeah. So I
Are
think,
we supposed to win?
well, I think, part of the issue, and this is a common thing for nice guys, is there were things she wasn't getting in the relationship from me that she wanted. And so the dissatisfaction, I think, was sort of, um, not a red herring, but it didn't give me the whole picture of what she was dissatisfied with, which was my lack of leadership. So that I will own. Um, so when a woman tells you that they don't feel like you're present or listening or really there, it's often because they don't feel your leadership, or that or your sense of purpose. Like they don't see that, or they're frustrated because they feel you're lazy.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of things that I think women, um, to generalize, don't articulate clearly because I don't think they're fully conscious of it. So this is an issue with their communication also. Um, so nice guys and maybe men in general don't know how to listen to a woman's complaints and really understand what they mean a lot of the time. So I feel like I'm going in a couple different directions, but this is part of why people end up in these endless back and forths about you don't listen. It's because there's underlying needs that aren't getting met that people don't know how to express or people aren't even conscious of.
Yeah. And it's a good point that you made about, she's vocalizing, you're not listening to me. But actually, it's not about the listening. There's something else going on in the background. It's like maybe you're not taking enough leadership. Maybe you're not, making her feel understood or supported. But let's just turn it around. Let's just turn the tables around the other way. Because, when I started getting to personal development, when I started reading a lot of, relationship books, there was always the emphasis towards, men, you got to listen to women, you got to listen to her, you got to listen to her, right? So that's what I focused on in my early development was, really being quiet, really being validating her, really being empathetic, really seeing, what's really going on in the background. But there aren't many books that say, hang on a minute, what about the other side? Do you feel understood? So I want to ask you guys, do you feel understood, validated, appreciated, and respected by women in your conversations?
In my relationship today, yes, I would say that's true for 95% of the time.
That's
There's
a
those
pretty good
times
grade.
where, yeah, right, yeah. There's definitely those times where I don't feel listened to, but I think the vast majority of it, my wife and I have worked really hard on learning communication skills, being patient with each other. So it's been a hard fought battle. This isn't something that just came naturally to us. We really had to dig in and work, and she's just as motivated as I am to learn how to communicate in ways that are effective. But I think in general, we're really poor listeners. In fact, the studies that have been done by the Gottman Institute is like 68% of communication is miscommunication, and so only of 40% of what you're saying is getting through in the way that you intend it to get through. So you have to understand, first of all, like we have a terrible way of communicating. I mean, I send tones through my throat, through the airwaves that hit your ears, and we have this an agreement called language that we all know what everything means. Now Faisal and you and I were having this conversation way back when, and we both speak English, and you said something about throwing toys out the pram, and I was like, what does that mean? Toys out the pram? And you're like, the pusher. I'm like, pusher? What the fuck's a pusher? And you're like the thing you push the baby in. And I'm like, oh, a stroller. And you go, oh yeah, a stroller. That's right. You remember? I don't know if you remember that conversation, but
Yeah, I
you
remember
know,
that one. Yeah.
so we're speaking the same
Thanks for telling
language.
me. I was in suspense. Okay.
We're speaking the same language and like couldn't communicate to each other. So there's a lot of things, whether it's cultural or language, or you're speaking British and I'm speaking American. There's lots of times where communication doesn't get through, and so I think there's a big part of us that needs to have a lot of grace around that. But yeah, oftentimes I don't feel understood.
Chuck, you said you both worked on communication, right? Uh, so why did she have to work on communication? I mean, there's a lot of guys say, well, women are naturally better communicators. So if women are, I'm just generalizing here.
Mm-hmm.
If women are naturally better communicators, why does she have to work on her communication?
Communication isn't about speaking. Communication
Hmm.
is a two-way street. It's about sending and receiving. So it's not just about like women are better speakers and able to speak what they are, therefore men are poor listeners and can't understand. it's both. We both need to work on listening. So, active listening skills. There's some great communication skills out there, whether it's imago dialogue or nonviolent communication is another good one. But learning communication skills is something that we're not really taught about how to speak in a way, that is the other person will want to receive, and then B, how do we receive things that other people are telling us? Do we get defensive quickly? I mean, a lot of times people, you'll hear one word, you'll latch onto that word, and all of a sudden, you totally misunderstood what they've said.
Yeah, you get defensive. Right. Do you guys want to test? Right. This is a communication test, right? And
I didn't
a lot of
study. I'm not prepared.
yeah. Well, let's see this, because a lot of guys, especially my background's very tech. So learning communication was, something that I really had to work on. And I was reading this book, and you kind of mentioned one of the aspects of it. So what's wrong with this statement, right? Okay, what's wrong with the statement? I feel like you don't love me. I feel like you don't care, right? Do you know what's wrong with that statement? All right, let's go to Ari first. Do you know what's wrong with that statement? I feel like you don't love me.
Well, there's a I feel. So I think it's a feeling that you don't love me. I think
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's something wrong with that, but that's notable. You're also you're making assumptions about what the other person actually is doing or feeling for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Chuck. I feel like you don't love me. I feel like you don't care.
I'm falling for your trick. Your tricks here, Faisal. No, I guess I would, if I had to wager a guess, it would be that it's really attacking the other person as opposed to speaking, what it is that you need.
Okay.
And when you attack somebody, then you're going to put them on the defensive.
So both of those are valid as well. Now, when I heard about this statement, it says, I feel like you don't care. I feel like you don't love me. There's a piece missing. There's something wrong with the statement. So when it says, I feel like, and then put the feeling in,
Mm-hmm.
and then you make the statement, right? So I feel lonely, or I feel sad. Yeah. That makes me feel like you don't care, or you don't care. So as soon as those words were added to that sentence, what it did was the other person tended not to go into defensiveness, because they could really rationalize that. I feel like, I feel sad, I feel lonely, or I feel empty.
Because they
And then
own
you
their
whatever
own
you say.
feelings.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you said I feel, but you haven't finished the sentence. It's incomplete sentence. And that's why, one of the things I learned about communication is my communication was all tech, computer programming, software. That was great. That was easy. It's all logical. And that's a problem. A lot of guys have logical communication, right? Usually the feminine has feminine emotional communication, and that's a massive bridge. And I found that in my relationship was I'm logically saying, I've just listened to everything you said. If this was a court case, I'd win because I logically got it. She's expressing her emotions. I'm not connected to the emotions. So that's when women have said you're emotionally unavailable. All that means is that it was missing that emotional connection, tones, and language, and those words. And what I discovered was, so if women say men are emotionally unavailable, what about women? Again, I'm generalizing. What are they missing? What do you think they're missing?
Well, I think that men, you mentioned this word a couple of times, winning, about winning. All right. And when we make it into a competition, then there's a winner or a loser. And men tend to, go with a zero-sum game. I win, you lose. And I think that what we really need to approach it is a non-zero-sum game, which is we all win or we all lose, and that's where collaboration takes place. So I think if we're trying to win something, and guys, we're more competitive, so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, i'm I'm gonna win this thing. I beat you down and now I feel superior to you because I made my point and you're wrong, and that kind of thing. That all that does is really damage the relationship. You haven't really won anything. All you've done is manage to make her
Yeah.
feel like a loser. So I think you really need to approach communication in the format of a non-zero sum game. There is no winner or loser. Either we both win, we both are take care of this thing called relationship, or we both
Mm.
lose and the relationship suffers as a result of that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point as well. And also, sometimes that winning could be that, hey, I've succeeded in being able to communicate. I've succeeded in communicating to be able to learn and be able to connect with that person. And one of the things that I think guys struggle with is what I see is that I found this in my experience that, okay, I'm not as emotionally available, but then I find that some of my partners who are very much on the feminine spectrum want logically available. So what happened was when I was communicating in logic, that it was getting lost. When she was communicating in emotions, it was getting lost on me. And the work that I've done in the past, and then with my say communication, is saying, hey, listen, I'm just trying to make a logical point here, and this might not make it might not sit well with you, but this is the rational I'm seeing right here. So what I was doing was I was taking my ownership and expressing, I'm just seeing this from a logical point of view. I can't see this right now in an emotional point of view. And this is what I'm saying. This is what I'm communicating, and it's coming from that space. And then what happens is when both of us calm down, because I'm trying to make a point, she's trying to make an emotional point. What I noticed was that both of us at later point then calm down and say, okay, this is where we're trying to get to. And what it was like more like Apple and Android trying to talk to each other, but they're on different levels. So you had the in between part, which sounds like, Chuck, you guys have been doing is trying to bridge that gap. So what I see is that gap needs to be bridged from both parties. The logical side needs to come into play. So does the emotional side come into play. Because it just felt at that point unfair because I just got to be the one who's listening to the emotions. I've got to be. How about, because I have a lot of guys who say, well, I'm expressing something. I'm making a logical point. It's a great point, and it's causing me a headache if, why she can't get this. So it was like, okay, how about if you communicate what the logical and where you're coming from? And I noticed that the guys started to make a big bridge from this.
I think there should be a conversation about when you're getting into a romantic relationship with someone about the differences between your communication styles. And if you have a kind of a typical male communication style, she has a typical female one, and how that might look, so you can approach conversations with a consciousness. So I think that's one of the things I'm taking here. Another thing I was thinking about as you guys were talking was just that a lot of times nice guys, they want the outcome of a conversation to be the end of tension, the end of conflict, but that's not necessarily a successful outcome. That might be nice guys success in communication, but that's just getting rid of tension, and it doesn't mean that both people have had their feelings heard out and understood. And so
Yeah,
sometimes a successful outcome of a conversation is there's still some tension there, but you guys have actually both heard each other, and you're not trying to fix each other. Um, you just need to sit with the other person's communication.
yeah. It's a really good point, Ari, about saying, hey, you know, some people say we have different love languages. Maybe the communication about, hey, my communication style is more biased towards this style. And then, what's your communication style biased towards? There's some guys I know who are very much in their emotional aspect, and their partners is very much in the logical aspect of it. So again, being able to take ownership of that. Guys, this has been a great conversation. I hope you got a lot of value out of this as well. And again, communication is something that, it's constant work, and being able to express. Also, did you know that when they did a research on emotions and emotive words, women or girls had a larger vocabulary when it came to emotive words. And I think it was about 12 words was the average, and the guys were usually about 6 words, 6 to 8 words. And a lot of things that I found that when connecting with women was increase my vocabulary range when it came to emotions as well. And that makes a huge difference. Guys, this has been the Nice Guy Show. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe and help us to reach more men who need this support. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, make sure to subscribe there as well. Go to theniceguyShow.com to get on the mailing list. And if you like this podcast, check out episode number 52, The Feminine Freakout, How to Bring Calm to Your Partner. See you on the next show.
You've been listening to The Nice Guy Show with certified Nice Guy recovery coaches Ari Graff, Chuck Chapman, and Faisal Kokar. Be sure to subscribe to this channel so you can listen to our latest episodes and visit us on www.theniceguyShow.com. If you have any topics you'd like to hear us discuss, send us an email at support@theniceguyShow.com. Thanks for listening.